we're talking a lot about customers, but because within the canvas they have many sections. For example, there's one exclusively dedicated to customer relations. This section that comes after the channel part is very important because it tells the individual types of activities that we are trying to do to convince them to buy directly from us. So let's see it as an attempt to tell what happens. The channel part is a list of channels, so it doesn't talk about the business, but maybe it's telling us that we have an online presence and that we ship with a certain type of logistics. Here we are talking about the activities we use at the marketing and sales level. We have to answer this question about how we relate to customers, what are the opportunities we have, and above all, who takes care of them within the company, because clearly on the canvas there is no dedicated section for the team, but consider that putting so many activities already in this section means a very important effort also in the channel part. Therefore, evaluate well, trying to focus on the channels that you consider most important. In the literature, it is said in different ways, but in terms of numbers, practically, having a new customer is much more expensive than keeping the ones that are already there. Don't make the mistake of considering this part only as getting new customers, but also in the part of retention and making more revenue with individual customers, because we will see that there is a completely dedicated funnel. Be careful, because when you review the canvas, it is likely that there will be a lot of levels of activity on the get and less on the other two. Now, let's look at this funnel, which is called Get, Keep, Grow. This type of funnel is created because in the first part, you got the individual customers. We make ourselves known and try to convince them to buy directly from us. And if we are successful, they then become part of our customer base. What we have to do now is to maintain this next relationship, so the keeping part, and then do the growing part, which means growing with them. Try to understand if they can be a starting point to have new customers, or if we can have more turnover from the same customers, because the customer acquisition part is very heavy, so it's very expensive. At a time when we have so many customers, the ideal would be to evaluate very well the maintenance and growth parts rather than doing activities that are decidedly expensive to get new customers. The get part is focused on obtaining new information. Here we try to understand how these people get information about us, what are the activities that can be useful for us. Consider that in this case, as in channels, there is room for creativity. So it's okay if you have a very large number of ideas to write on the canvas, but then try to figure out what are the ones you can do with the team you have and evaluate which ones could be useful for later. Be careful, because scoring too many would mean a management difficulty later. Let's always give that example of this reality called Dagu that sells these typical food packages. How can they make themselves known? And there are many ideas because, for example, there could be a space for recipes, a space for the community, a space for emotions, perhaps with videos on YouTube. But there are so many activities that one can do to increase this part. Only, as we said, you have to focus. Think about when you go directly online or try to sell on a local basis, what are some activities that help you to get some visibility? Another case could be that of Musement, which sells travel packages. They, for example, could make personalized guides on individual places. They could try to tell the cultural environment that exists because they sell in so many different countries. They should try to focus perhaps on the history part of communication with the larger newspapers, because it may be that within some travel guides, for example, of the Corriere, perhaps there is also room for Musement to explain what could be the ideas for booking this type of experience. They may be in contact with bloggers. There are so many ideas to put to good use, but let's try to understand at the level of the individual reality what the possibilities are, because they are different from each other. But it tends to be very useful to tell what we are trying to do, because in their case, the advertising part could also be very interesting. A third case could always be Satispay, understanding how a payments platform relates to the sector. You see that by going to their site, you already have an idea of a very different reality from PayPal or Strike. He has a very playful style and is also very focused on the experience part. You can already see that with the communication Do It Smart tries to help you find information with a very different style from that more serious, basically used by a bank. So let's try to understand, even when we are trying to unhinge a single sector, what could be opportunities to have more visibility. Some of the opportunities could therefore be the PR part, trying to pay for advertising to understand if within certain channels, for example, Facebook, there is interest in what we are doing. We could also try to go to industry events. So in the case, for example, of Satispay, try to understand if we are able to be on magazines that also talk about new business, because it is something very technological, or try to understand if with articles, social networks, or emails, we can increase this type of interest in what we are trying to sell. We always consider that these channels can be very different from each other. So the suggestion is to be ambitious but carefully, because the management of too many channels is really complicated.